Pleasure to welcome to the show founder of the Goalie Gurus. It's Pat Wallace. Pat, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Damon. Really excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, anytime I get the chance to talk with a fellow lacrosse goalie coach, it's always a blast. So I'm looking forward to this, Pat, and I thank you for reaching out. I typically ask goalies that I've had on this show if they remember their very first time in goal. It might have been a while, but do you remember that story?
I do remember the first time I played goalie. It was in the backyard, actually. I grew up the youngest of three boys. The oldest was an attackman. Middle son was a goalie. And before I even started playing, they really decided for me that I was going to be a goalie too. Because we all fell in love with the game from a young age. It wasn't enough for us simply to play at practice for 2 hours. We all wanted to keep playing in the afternoon until we lost that light. So starting at like age 9 or 10, I started playing goalie in the backyard. And then age 11, I finally started playing actual organized lacrosse for my town in Winchester, Mass.
Nice. So normally when you got like the brothers situation, there's just one goalie, right? Like you got two shooters and then they're like, all right, we'll put the youngest in the goal. But in your family, there was actually two goalies.
Yeah, I think a little bit part of that was my middle brother, John, who's actually on staff with us for Goalie Gurus. As much as he loved being a goalie, he really missed scoring. And
Yeah.
so I think shooting on me in the backyard after his own practices kind of filled that need for him a little bit.
Yeah. See, luckily for me, I never started. I played a little bit of midi, but I never had any never had that many goals in a game. And so I never had that like taste of scoring. So I was all goalie all right from the start.
Oh, okay. Yeah, when I started out, I think I spent most of my games as a U13 playing like
Yeah.
first half as goalie, then second half as an attackman. Then they'd kind of rotate that second half goalie. And then by the time I hit U15s in seventh and eighth grade, it was all goalie all the time.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's typically one of the questions I ask the goalies is like, because at a certain point, you gotta, if you're serious about goalie, you gotta go 100% goalie. And so, like, what is that age, where you make that switch? What would you say to a young goalie who's wondering that these days?
I would say ideally fifth or sixth grade will really put you on a good path. But I've seen goalies who made the switch junior year of high school end
Yeah.
up being high school All-Americans and go on to play Division I lacrosse. I'm blanking on the player's name now, but back when I was growing up, there was a goalie for Governor's Academy who literally switched positions in between sophomore and junior year, and he ended up being a 2 year All ISL player, All American.
Yeah, well, there's so many great skills that you learn, that are applicable to being a great goalie, like by playing in the field. I mean,
Absolutely. And a
heck,
big question I've been getting a lot from my goalies is, should I also play box goalie too this winter?
mm,
Because box goalie and box programs in general have been kind of exploding in state with more and more box specific programs sprouting up all over the place. And I have to give an honest report to these goalies and their parents, which is it's not always the best idea to play box goalie, in my opinion, just because you're a field goalie. If you're still really early on in your developmental stages, you're still learning your stance, still learning your stepping, it can be kind of confusing to suddenly have to adjust how you stand in the goal, adjust how you hold your stick, and obviously adjust to protecting a much different size cage. And so I kind of steer those
uh,
beginner goalies towards playing with a short stick, a la Brett Queener or Blaze Reardon. And really, that's going to expand their stick skills and their knowledge of the game. And I think that can be, in a lot of cases, more beneficial to a field goalie than just hopping into the box pads and not really knowing what you're doing.
yeah, interesting. That's an interesting topic. So when I played at Cal, our team had a box lacrosse team in the off season that we played, in a league in the Bay Area. And like I was the goalie. They put me in as the goalie, but like I didn't have any of the box pads. I just played like a field goalie. And like, I stood up, right? And then it was horrible because one, like you take way more shots than field, right? Because it's just up and down, back and forth, shots. So I was getting beat up. And then also like because the goal's smaller, I started to have this bad habit of thinking like when I got back to the field, like everyone's going to shoot low because in box, guess what? Everyone shot low. And so it developed these bad habits in me. So when people like right out of college, when people ask me, should I play box? They ask me that same question. I was like, no, like I had, because based on my experience, I had a pretty rotten experience. It sounds like you kind of agree that there's some bad habits you pick up. I will, to kind of give the other side of the argument, there are some benefits of learning like positioning and just seeing a lot of shots, right?
Oh, absolutely. I
Yeah.
personally love playing box goalie. When I play myself in adult leagues, it's more often box than it is for a field,
Oh
just
yeah.
because it's so much easier for guys in their late 20s and 30s to find 5 to 10 guys to field a team as
Right.
opposed to finding 15 to 20. It's a lot easier to organize that, get your buddies together for a tournament.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, there's pros and cons, and I do think that, if you're not going to play goalie and box, definitely play in the field, right? Because there you get tremendous benefit. The conditioning, just the shots, like learning how to shoot, the stick skills, lots of benefits. But it goes both way on goalies, I think. So that's cool. So then, how did you then learn the position? How'd you go about learning how to make saves? Was it your brother that taught you, or did you guys attend some camps, get some coaching? How did that play out for you?
A little bit of both. I got a lot of coaching from my older brother, who honestly excelled a lot at a young age at the position. He was a very good goalie very quickly. And so kind of just mimicked what he did initially. And then as we started playing select lacrosse, as that came to New England, we really focused on the position more. And that's when we started going to specialty camps. Like I went to Pete goalie growing up, would go to the Cannons camp anytime I could, work with their goalie coaches. And then eventually I worked with Kevin O'Brien, who was an All American at Lincoln Sudbury High School, All American at Georgetown, and played for the Cannons for a number of years. He was my private goalie coach all throughout middle school and high school, leading into my college career. And that was an incredible resource for me. And that kind of coaching is honestly the inspiration behind Goalie Gurus, is kind of my recognition that I wouldn't have gotten nearly as far as my career as I did had it not been for that really focused individual training every Sunday for an hour in the off season.
That's beautiful. I was going to ask you, when you mentioned you're from the New England area, before we hit record, if you knew Coach Quirk, because I know he's from that area and has done a lot of training. But I don't know, was he training you at Peak when you were there, or was it
Yeah,
other
he was
folks?
running peak back in the day when I was there in the early 2000s, mid 2000s. My brother John actually played for him at Endicott. And then
Nice.
I actually had Coach Quirk as a professor in my grad program about a year ago at Endicott, getting my master's in sports leadership. So I know him well. He's a great guy.
Yeah, great guy. Absolute legend. Love that guy. Um, that's great. What an opportunity. So what were some of those main takeaways from those early lessons? Was it very much like, this is the stance, this is the positioning, or there's some other more advanced takeaways that you got at that young age?
Definitely positioning was the main focus point I remember taking away from those camps. I remember the most helpful thing that they did for us is they would record at least one drill every week. And before you left, they would break down that film with you and give you notes on A, what looks good, B, what doesn't look good and needs fixing. And then I got to go home with that. I think it was a DVD back in the day, and
Yeah.
that handwritten note card, very low tech. And I got to work on those things the entire off season going into the fall and winter. I got to take those notes with me. But they also did a lot. We worked on clearing from a young age. Like they made
Yeah.
it very clear the way to impress college coaches is to not only make the big save, but to push transition and really ignite that offense early.
Yeah, 100%. That's a great idea of filming even drills, right? I encourage goalies to film themselves, like, making saves, obviously, because you can learn so much when you look at the tape. And now that like Lax Goalie Rat has grown a little bit, I get a lot of tape. A lot of people send me their tape, and I try to review as many as I can, if not provide like one or two helpful things. But like, it's amazing what you can see in it. Like there was this young kid that was making saves. And I think a lot of times coaches will look at like the result, or not coaches, but like more like parents, kind of look at the result. Like, is he making the save or is he not making the save? But he was clearly like, it was that field turf that has like the black pellets in it. You know what I mean? And like, you know, when he's making that save, that back foot's dragging, and you could just see these pellets like shooting up. I'm like, man, you're dragging that back foot like an anchor. You know, and it's just you could totally see him like slowing down. So that's a cool concept. And I imagine that's something that you now do with Goalie Gurus, is kind of tape them and
Yes,
kind of
that
send
is
them on their
one
way.
of the services we offer is you can book an individual session with me. And if you have any game film, whether it's on YouTube or you have a huddle account with your team, we can just share screen via Zoom just like this. And we can go through clip by clip and break it down exactly how I did last spring with my goalies at Amherst College, which we would do every Monday or every Thursday after a game. That starting goalie would be in the office with me at 9 a.m. and we'd meet for at least an hour going over every clip from the game, whether that was a shot that hit the cage or missed the cage, or it was a clear. We would really break that down to the minutia and really focus on what was going well and what wasn't going well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What you know, for young goalies who maybe have some tape, but don't have like, you know, can't get in contact with you or I to review it, and they want to review it themselves. Like, how would you advise going about reviewing film? Like, what, you know, what was kind of what are you looking for?
Just any general themes or repeated patterns in the saves you're making. Like if you're making a lot of saves, are they all up high? Are they all down low? If you're getting beat, are you noticing, like you said, that you're only stepping with one foot towards those shots?
Yeah.
Maybe that's a sign that you need to push off with both feet and really leave the starting line and get a little bit more aggressive with your stepping. So just kind of being a student of the game yourself and really looking for patterns, both positive and negative, and trying to find that those keys to success on your own.
Yep. Great one. Great one. Yeah. And that's too where I think you can use, you know, watching the pro goalies and the top tier college goalies, you know, watching their saves of like what it's supposed to look like. Cause most of the time when they make a save, it is like, not all the time, right? Sometimes like you just make these like what the heck kind of saves, but most of the time when you make a save, when they make a save, it's textbook, right? You know, top hand straight to the ball, lead step driving, trail step recovered, balance throughout it, no hitch, right? And that's, you can kind of see what a save looks like, and then you can kind of compare it to what you're doing, right?
Absolutely. I
Yeah,
do caution though, especially my younger goalies, from trying to mimic pro goalies a little bit too much.
yeah,
Especially they're great goalies, but like Tim Troutner and Dylan Ward, correct me if I'm wrong, they're about 6'2" to 6'4". So playing a 3-point arc like they do a lot of the time and getting away with only stepping with one foot,
yeah.
that's going to be tough for a seventh grade goalie who's under 5 feet to really mimic properly and get success with. Like
Totally
I
agree.
a sixth grade goalie this past year, incredible goalie. He won an award for being the best goalie in the state over the summer. He loves Tim Troutner, and he really wanted to play a 3-point arc just like Tim Troutner.
Right.
I had to break his heart a little bit and say, "I'm sorry, buddy. We got to hold off on that till the growth spurt comes in.
Yeah.
He can still be your hero, but we got to play just a little bit differently. We got to play to our strengths."
Yeah. Well, tell him even Tim Troutner himself would say the same thing. I mean, Tim Troutner himself didn't play that way until he got that growth spurt. So there you go. But yeah, I 100% agree with you. Yeah, I'm 5'8", right? So I can't play like 6'4" Jack Kincannon as much as I want to. We're two different guys. I will say I feel like there are certain elements that you can pick out of their game that certainly you can, you know, put in your game.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. And then for me, then I love to watch like Adam Gittleman, right? Love watching Adam Gittleman, and Brett Queener, and like the, you know, those smaller, quicker style goalies, because that was my style of goalie play. So I think that, you know, finding a goalie that matches your style, and then like picking and choosing different elements of other people's games can serve you well.
Absolutely. Cannot
Yeah.
agree more.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Speaking of the pro goalies, who do you like watching the most right now?
So my favorite two, I probably can't pick one, would be Kyle Bernlohr and then Adam Gittleman are probably my top two. So
Yeah.
I just feel like they're the most fundamentally sound and they have the most translatable style of play to most goalies. Whether you're 5'2" or 6'2",
Yeah.
if you play the way that Gittleman plays, you play the way that Bernlohr plays, I think you'll find a lot of success no matter what level you're at because their fundamentals are just phenomenal.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah, Bernlohr probably the most solid fundamental, most solid technical goalie, and like works the hardest too of just understanding the goalie position. I mean, everything I've heard and just having him on the show, like, dude just studies shooters like inside and out, and he knows exactly where people are trying to go like before they even do. It's just crazy. He's such a good goalie. Yeah, love it. Awesome. So there's a couple questions. Well, I'd love to just kind of dig back more into your story. So then when do you start to have like a little bit of success, and then you start to consider playing lacrosse at the college level?
Sure. So growing up, hockey and lacrosse were my two loves. And then once I got into middle school, I went to a local private school called St. Sebastian's. Wasn't really known for lacrosse back then. It was more of a hockey school, but now it's really known for both sports. And I realized pretty quickly in middle school, my path to success lay more with lacrosse than it did with hockey. I was going up against hockey players who would get drafted sophomore or junior year into the pros. And
Sophomore, junior of high school.
yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
guys got drafted in high school, or
Wow.
they got drafted right after they graduated when they were in the USHL.
Right.
I think the school still has more pro players in the league than any other high school in the country.
Wow.
And so I was humbled in my hockey career there, but I did see success early on in middle school in lacrosse. So at that point in middle school, I was kind of emboldened to really focus on that position. And from a young age in middle school, I really wanted to play Division I lacrosse. And that's when I really geared up the training with Kevin O'Brien in the off season, went to every camp I could, played in every off season league I could.
Nice, nice, nice. With all that playing, did you ever get burnt out?
I did a couple times. I would usually have heavy June, heavy July camp schedules mixed in with club tournaments. And then August, I would take off entirely from the sport.
Mm.
Sometimes I even wouldn't play wall ball that entire month. I would just do other activities, fishing, going to the beach with friends, whatever it may be, and just really giving myself a pause. And I found that when I did that, once September turned around and I had like 2 weeks to prepare for fall ball practices, I was really fired up and really excited to have the game back in my life. And
Yeah.
giving myself that 2 to 4 week pause in August, however long I took it for, was really necessary for me to avoid too much of a burnout.
Yeah, I think that's smart, right? Because especially at the goalie position, I mean, you see so much rubber and you start getting beat up, right? And then you start getting this feeling of like, I don't want to, I just not feeling it today, right? And then that sort of creeps up and creeps up and grows and grows and grows. But you're right. Once you take that 2, 3, maybe 4 week break, when you come back, you got that fire again. So highly recommend doing that for young goalies. And sometimes too, goalies can kind of get away from like why they started playing in the first place, like why they like the sport in the first place. And I think that leads to burnout, but it sounds like that might not have been the case for you.
No, I definitely always had a clear vision in mind of I'm doing this because I enjoy playing more than anything else. It's always the favorite
Yeah.
part of my day, favorite part of my week. And
Yeah.
I always had a really strong burning desire to play at the highest level.
Yeah. Love it. And then how was the recruiting process for you? I mean, this was a while back. So if you remember it, love to dig into that story.
I remember it was a bit tough for me. I had very high expectations for myself, not only athletically, but academically. I really wanted to see myself at either an ACC school or an Ivy League school. And if that didn't turn out, I was more likely to go to a NESCAC school than to maybe just to go D1, just to go D1. That was
Right.
not going to be my path. And so I ended up having to go the PG route just because senior year, my SAT scores made a huge jump that suddenly I became a lot more desirable to coaches in those conferences. And so I had to be a little bit more patient than some of my peers who were committing fall of their junior year. I kind of had to bide my time and wait for the right opportunity. And unfortunately, I didn't find a home in the Ivy League or any of those schools, but I did receive a very unique opportunity from the University of Richmond. The head coach at the time, Glenn Carter, reached out to me through my Avon coach, Skip Flanagan, who's an absolute legend and probably the greatest coach in the country, in my opinion. Still coaching to this day. Um, and he told me that University of Richmond was very much planning to make the jump towards Division One, and that it would happen likely my sophomore year.
Mm.
And I started digging into the school and its academics and its history. And I said to myself, wow, this it's not an Ivy League school, but this is a fantastic school. It's in an incredible location, and I'd have the opportunity to help build a program. And all of that sounded really incredible to me. And so that's when I made the decision. I think it was around November of my post grad year to apply early decision two to University of Richmond and play club for my freshman year, and then hopefully have the experience of playing 3 years of Division One lacrosse for a new program.
Oh, wow. That's an amazing story. So, I mean, I guess a leap of faith. So were they like in the MCLA before that?
Yes, they were in the
Yeah.
MCLA Division One, but they were like a relatively new club program.
Yeah.
So this was a pretty ambitious move by the school and by the program and the alumni who were very supportive of it. Um, and then, unfortunately for me, things ended up working at Richmond. I got a concussion first semester I was down there. Wasn't able to continue with school that semester. Had to head back to Boston, kind of get things checked out from a neurological standpoint.
Yeah.
And the doctor that I saw initially was worried about me returning to contact sports.
Oh, wow.
And so he suggested strongly that I give up playing lacrosse in favor of being able to return to school sooner and not having my academics be interrupted again. So I actually went 2 years without playing. And it was at that time I decided not to return to Richmond. I actually transferred to Boston College that I felt like was a little bit more of a better fit for me academically and gave me the opportunity to be closer to family as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Interesting.
while I was
Yeah.
at Boston College, I obviously kept checking in with my neurologist regularly to get updates on how I was doing, how my recovery was progressing. And I saw a second opinion from another doctor, um, Dr. Cantu out of Emerson Hospital, who eventually cleared me to play,
Mm.
which surprised the heck out of me. I wasn't really expecting it. Probably hadn't been keeping myself in the best shape, to be honest. And so I was like, well, this is kind of cool. Step one, I'm going to sign up for a men's league.
Yeah.
And so I signed up for a men's league, and it wasn't pretty, but God, I loved it. It was incredible to be playing again, having gone 2 years without the sport, having those been 2 years when I really didn't think I would get the sport back ever again.
Wow.
Really emboldened me to try and play as high a level again as I could. And so for me, the next best opportunity was the club team at Boston College, which is a great MCLA Division One program. And that's when I started working with our mutual friend, Coach Matt Jewers. Did a couple sessions with him, and he really helped me clean up the bad habits that I'd kind of developed during my lapse in my career. And he helped me get focused to play for what ended up being 1 year of club lacrosse at BC. And during that year at BC playing club, I started doing a little bit of coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that as much as it felt great to be playing again, it felt even better to be coaching and to be working with these middle school and high school goalies and to kind of recognize that same fire in their eyes that
Yeah.
I had at that age. And that's sort of when my path veered a little bit and I stopped really playing that often. And I kind of became addicted to coaching and have been coaching nonstop for 7 or 8 years since that point.
Great story. Great story. I want to go back to the concussion because I feel like I've taken a bunch of hard shots, right to the helmet. And I mean, some of them probably left me a little bit dazed. And I'll be honest, maybe one of them was a concussion, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But how did you, I mean, how did you get hit so hard? And it was kind of the first one that it was like, that's it. Like it just got you in the wrong
So
spot or?
it likely wasn't the fact that it was such a momentous impact that I suffered when I was at Richmond.
Hmm.
It was the compounding, the doctors believed, of past concussions that
Yeah.
hadn't been recognized and hadn't been treated.
Yeah.
That's what concerned them, is that they believed there was a prior history of me just sort of toughing through symptoms. And I believe, honestly, they might have been a little overly cautious with me initially.
Right.
And like I said, a second opinion cleared me to play. So I think if I had seen that doctor initially, he would have told me maybe don't play for 6 months. And
Right.
then I would have probably stayed at Richmond and played my sophomore year. But I
Right.
try not to look back too much. I try and always look forward. I'm a very big believer that everything happens for a reason.
Yeah. Same here. Same here. I really wish they would allow like the ice hockey goalie style helmets. Don't you? I mean, those seem to be way more protective than what lacrosse goalies are given.
Oh, absolutely. When I play box goalie, for example, I'm always wearing a hockey helmet over a field
Right.
helmet. The
Right.
vision's not nearly as great, but I feel way safer wearing one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially
Just because like the way
coming.
it impacts the force, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Yeah. So you have a 2 year layoff, and that can be really well. It is. It's really challenging for a lacrosse goalie because like you get, in a lot of ways, like you're building up your confidence in this little house of cards, and it's kind of fragile. And then a 2 year break, and it's probably, in many ways, you probably had to start over on a lot of things, including building your confidence back up. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So what I had to do was I had to seek out every opportunity I could to play, whether that be men's league pickup games throughout Boston. I played in a league in Quincy, Mass for a while that actually had some really great players in it, some former college All-Americans, a couple pro guys in Boston would play in that league. And so while initially I was getting lit up a little bit, so we're playing on a short field, full-size goals, that terrible indoor overhead lighting.
Oh,
It wasn't
yeah.
ideal to start, but I kind of slowly battled my way back towards feeling like, okay, I'm good enough to play at least at the club level again. I can go to tryouts in the fall and
Right.
I'll be okay.
Yeah. What would you give any other sort of advice to a young goalie that for whatever reason has been off, hasn't played goal in a while? Maybe they've been hurt. Maybe they've been, I don't know, maybe they just took a break for a year and now they want to get back into it. What,
Absolutely. Something that I wish I had done more of is off-field training, doing
yeah,
things like an agility ladder,
yeah.
jump rope, working with resistance bands. I'm a huge fan of goalies putting resistance bands around their ankles when they're working on stepping, just because, as you know, if you step with your lead foot and you have a resistance band around your ankles, that back foot's snapping right behind it, and you're
Hmm.
getting that immediate muscle memory built in of stepping with both feet and finishing how you started. And so I think if I'd utilized tools like jump rope, ladder, and resistance bands, I would have gotten in shape a lot quicker and I
Yeah.
would have gotten back to sort of my natural tendencies a lot quicker. And so I think that's another way that a young goalie who has a break can really catch up to their old progressions, is by really working outside of the cage just as hard, if not harder, than they work inside the cage.
Yeah. Totally agree. 100% agree. Just being, in great physical shape helps your game so much. I remember after I graduated from Cal, I wasn't really playing that much at all lacrosse, but I was playing pickup basketball at my gym for like an hour a day, and I went back and I played in the alumni game and had like 5 saves, gave up 1 goal, and everyone's like, "Oh man, Damon, you it looks like you're still keeping up with the game." And I'm like, I haven't been playing at all, but I 100% accredit it to just being in great shape from basketball, right, and being able to push off and react and all that stuff that you'd get from jump rope or agility ladder or any sort of physical band exercise, right? Just being in great shape will help your game go a long way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, love it. That's awesome. Um, well, cool. And then I'd love to hear about this. In the timeline of the story, is that when the Goalie Gurus comes into play, or when did you start? Your goalie training
So
business.
Goalie Gurus comes in a little bit later.
Okay.
So that was about 2015. Yeah, 2015. was the spring I stopped playing club at BC and then decided to coach full time outside of my studies in the classroom. And by 2018, I had learned that while I love being a head coach at the youth level, I'd been a head coach for a high school, Rimmer and May School, right by BC's campus. What I really love doing is working with other goalies.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when I started doing individual goalie lessons, about 2018 at this point, using just an app called Coach Up that you might be familiar with. Just pairs up parents with local position coaches across pretty much every major sport. And I started to slowly build a client base through Coach Up. And at the same time, I'd work with different club organizations on running their off-season and in-season clinics. And meanwhile, while I'm doing this, Coach Drawers, who I stayed in touch with all these years, was sort of doing the same thing on his own, just kind of quietly doing a few lessons each week with different goalies, helping different club programs run their clinics. And we kind of had this realization, hey, we can kind of combine forces, we can do this together, and we can really build something great. And while we're sort of knocking our heads together, companies like Goalie Smith started popping up, who really, in my opinion, do the best job of anyone in the country at running great clinics for elite middle school and high school goalies. And that's the need we really wanted to fill with Goalie Gurus. Like I said, I went to peak goalie camp as a kid growing up. I think they're absolutely incredible at teaching the fundamentals of the position. Their resume speaks for itself. But I do remember as either a seventh or eighth grader, the last time I went, I started feeling like I wasn't getting as much out of the experience as I initially did. I feel like there's a little bit of a drop off. Once you got to a certain level, you were kind of just repeating the same information. And the clinics were a lot of teaching, which is great, but it wasn't high reps. And so I noticed Goalie Smith was doing these high intensity, high rep clinics in Baltimore. And then more recently, a guy, Jack Runkle, who my brother played with at Avon, is working with the goalie workshop, doing similar upbeat fast clinics. I immediately saw that's having a huge impact for goalies in these hotbed areas in Baltimore and in New Jersey. And in my mind, New England is every much as bit of a hotbed for lacrosse, and even more so for the goalie position. And I saw a need that needed to be filled. And so we talked about it this spring while I was working out at Amherst, that we'd finally join up. I'd start an actual company, and we'd offer both individual lessons for any and every goalie. And then we'd design these 75-minute, really high intensity, upbeat clinics tailored towards the elite middle school and high school goalies who maybe already play for one of these great club programs, but they're not just satisfied being the best goalie in the state. They want to be the best goalie in the nation. They want to play Division I. They want to play pro one day. And so that's kind of where our clinics come in, is to fill that need for those already great goalies to be even greater.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. I've had all those guys on the podcast, good friends, Coach Runkle, and also the Goalie Smith brothers. And they're expanding now too. They got Drake and Meg Taylor and Matt Gill and tons of great coaches. It's awesome.
They have incredible staff. I'll just say briefly, they were so gracious. Back in October, they actually came up to New England. They invited both Coach Drawers and myself to work the clinic with them. Nice. And that was just a great learning experience to see up close and personal, again, how, in my opinion, how the best in the nation do it. And it was really a good learning experience for us. Had some great takeaways, and also got to meet a bunch of great goalies at that clinic.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I love about the lacrosse goalie community. I mean, lacrosse community in general, but even more the goalie community. It's like smaller, and we're all trying to lift each other up, right? I mean, technically, absolutely, like, you're their competitor, right? But who cares? Like, they're going to invite you in, like, show you how things are done. And I mean, I would do the exact same, as I'm sure you would as well, to other goalie coaches out there, which is pretty cool for the goalie community. I was going to ask you what goes into a great clinic. It sounds like you mentioned a couple things. There's kind of like two two styles of clinic, right? And I don't know if there's a good word to separate them, but one is that just, it's for the kid that's just learning the basics, right? Like it doesn't make sense to go do a lot of reps if you don't know what you're trying to do. It's like going out there trying to surf a wave and you have no idea, like, how to surf a wave at all, or what even to do, and you're just gonna crash and burn. So at a certain age, you got to like learn the basics, and there's a clinic for that. Maybe that's a camp, I don't know. but then like you said, then there's also a clinic where, yeah, like, all right, I know how to surf a little bit, let's go hit some waves and see what we can do and have fun, that you were describing. So what, in your mind, what goes into a great clinic?
So for our clinics, what we really try and do is maximize the teaching window. For instance, we'll probably spend 2 minutes demonstrating a drill and then 10 minutes actually doing the drill. And the drill won't stop for those 10 minutes. We'll have usually 4 goalies to a net. Say, for example, we'll start off with 5-minute dynamic warm up, 10 minutes of hand-eye drills, and then we start every clinic with the footy drill that I learned from John Galloway years ago, because I just think that's an incredible drill to really get goalies in the habit of stepping towards every shot. And so what we'll do is we'll give goalies 4 reps and out, and then you rotate. And then after footy, we'll move on to a short stick with tennis ball warm up, same pace, 4 shots, then out. And if we start seeing something we don't like or see something we really like, we won't stop that drill. But what we'll do is we'll pull that one goalie aside out of the net. Those 3 other goalies keep on cycling through, and we get a little 30-second teaching moment with that one goalie, and then they're right back in the net and they're immediately applying what they learned. But we're not stopping the entire clinic to talk for 10 to 15 minutes, because after 5 minutes, you've lost everyone's attention. So we really try and keep the teaching to a quick 2 minutes and then 10 minutes of high intensity, high reps, but not just any reps. They need to be quality reps. So what we do for our clinics at Goalie Gurus is we bring in current and former college players, hire them as coaches, and really use them as informed shooters. So something that we do that I believe is really unique is we have a end on a save rule. So no matter what drill we're doing, you're not allowed to leave on getting scored on. So if it's footy, if it's short stick warm up, if your regular warm up, if it's 15-yard step downs, you're not ending on a negative result. You will stay in that cage until you make a big save, and then you'll leave on something positive.
Love it. Love it. I threw a clinic in the back in the Bay Area when I was back. I don't live there anymore, but I was back visiting my folks and threw a clinic. And one of my main takeaways was I got to get better shooters. So like I had the goalie from Cal, myself, and another dad who coaches, and like we couldn't score. There was one girl who's committed to Navy. She's going to play D1 at, it's either Navy or Army, I forget. And then there's another junior or sophomore in high school who's definitely going to play D1. And we did this like King of the Hill, and it was them two at the final. We couldn't score on them. We were taking so many shots.
I relate to that. That is definitely one of my biggest issues when I'm doing individual sessions. Is some of the goalies they're a little too good for my team.
Oh man, I'm like I gotta recruit some better shooters out here. Like and then the next day I'm all sore because I hadn't shot like that hard and that for a long time. So, well, that's awesome. So if people want to attend one of those clinics, where could they find the info?
All that info is at goaliegurus.com. We have on the homepage, we have a list of all the clinics that are upcoming, and then we have a registration tab in the top right corner. We'll be back at Compete Strength and Conditioning in Norwood, Mass on Thursday, December 15th. And then the first 2 Fridays in January 6th and January 13th, we'll be at the Edge in Bedford for the first time. Just for those of the people who don't know Massachusetts, Norwood's kind of South Shore. Bedford's a little bit closer to the North Shore. And so we're hoping to kind of expand our population of goalies that we've taught so far with a new clinic location in January.
Awesome. Love it. That's amazing. Hopefully we can get this podcast out before that, help promote it.
That'd be great.
Well, yeah. Well, remind me. We'll promote. I'll promote it in a lot of spots. But that's awesome. And so it's like who else could attend that very easily? Like Boston area? Is it like New York area? New York area? Help me. I mean, I'm a West Coast guy. Help me with
So
some
for the
geography.
clinic in Norwood, Mass on December 15th, I would say goalies in Connecticut, Rhode Island, and
Connecticut, Rhode Island.
Southeastern Mass. That's kind of who we're trying to hit. That's people who within an hour probably driving distance. The Bedford Clinic, mostly Massachusetts, southern New Hampshire, maybe the very southern eastern tip of Vermont. If there's some goalies up there looking for some great coaching, it'd be worth the drive down.
Cool.
But a little too far from New York because we're very much on the eastern part of the state
Got
at
it.
the moment, closer to Boston.
Got it. Cool. What with all your experience running these clinics and coaching youth goalies, what are some common bad habits that you tend to see amongst these goalies?
You've mentioned it before, but dragging the back foot is huge. I see tons of middle school goalies struggle with that. And then another bad habit we've been seeing at our clinics, even with some high school goalies, is just a little bit too much movement pre-shot with their hands,
Yeah.
dropping their hands or bringing them in. And so something we've really been focusing on with a few goalies in particular is being more efficient with their movement and really restricting their movement pre-shot.
Yeah. 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 100%. And the dragging of the back foot, I call it the glide drill because there used to be this like product called the glide that like was, I don't know, it's just like a piece of plastic that you put in between in between your stance, right? I mean, you could just drop a shaft in there, but like, essentially then you kind of have to consciously pick up that back foot. But a lot of times if you just tell kids or like trying to show them the tape of that, um, and the kid I was mentioning before, he actually didn't do it going to his off stick side. He didn't drag. He was only dragging going to his stick side. So it was kind of like you see how that feels when you go that way. Like do the same thing. So a lot of times when you just call it out, I think it, having that in mind, it kind of corrects itself. But that's a drill you can do to correct it.
Absolutely. And then
Yeah.
just one other bad habit that popped to mind. I'm really not a fan of goalies opening up their hips away from the shooter.
Oh
I
yeah.
feel like that's a bad idea for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
One, you're giving up surface area. And two, you might even just knock the ball into the net as opposed to making a clean save. So I really try and focus on goalies on keeping their hands out away from their body, keeping their
Right.
hips close to the shooter. And that's a trend I've kind of noticed a lot with middle school goalies is when something goes off hip and it's a little bit more difficult to react. They don't do this on stick side hip, but on off stick side, they'll open up and they'll maybe get a piece of it and they'll be frustrated, like, oh, why am I just missing this? And in reality, it's a really simple correction. You just got to be a little bit more intentional about where you're stepping and how you're stepping and really be more aggressive getting towards the ball. Whereas if you're opening up your hip, that probably means you're waiting on the shot a little too much.
Yeah. I've been toying with the idea of going more over the top too. I'd love to get your thoughts on this because I feel like, when you go underneath, like just that natural reaction, like it tends to like pull the shoulder this way. It tends to make you a little bit like more narrow, right? And yeah, there's tons of drills you can do to like, all right, I'm gonna stay square, I'm gonna stay square. But if I go over the top, it's just like I'm naturally square. Like I don't even have to fight against that sort of movement. I'm curious your thoughts on that.
That's interesting. I haven't thought of it like that.
Mm-hmm.
I've always taught that kind of sort of from chest level down, you should always go underneath because my thinking is if you miscalculate, it's a lot smoother to come up than it is if you guess too high to keep twisting your hands all the way around.
Going
But
down.
I'd have to play around with that a little bit. And
Yeah.
I'll get back to you. I'll work on it a little bit myself.
Yeah. I love throw that baby in the workshop and see what you come up with. Yeah, I'm kind of like where I'm at right now. I would say, just above the knee and down is underneath, like that low, and the
Oh wow.
rest is over the top.
That
But
would,
I'm
that'd
not.
be different for me. I'd have
Yeah,
to adjust to that personally playing
yeah, yeah,
style
yeah,
wise.
yeah, for sure. But I'm not so my way or the highway about it. Like if a goalie it does it the other way. Like I'm not going to completely change around his style, which I imagine that's kind of another cool question is like, are you the type of goalie coach that really changes around the style, or you just kind of, break out those, correct those bad habits?
I'm absolutely not. It's my way or the highway guy.
Yeah.
I'm not like that when I'm a head coach. I'm not like that when I'm an assistant. I'm not like that when I'm an individual goalie coach.
Yeah.
I try and be as much of a cooperative process as possible. Everyone's contributing. Everyone's feeling ownership over what's happening. A great example is I know a lot of coaches, goalie Smith included, are really big proponents of the lateral step. And
Mm-hmm.
I grew up playing with stepping out at a 45-degree angle. So
Same.
that's what I've known. That's always what I've coached. And so that's new for me to be coaching goalies who really like to step laterally. And I think it's perfect for goalies who are one, like we talked about Tim Troutner or Dylan Ward. They're 6'2", 6'4", with these really long legs that just want quick lateral step and they're at the pipe. But when you're working with a smaller middle school goalie, I'm a little bit more skeptical of their ability to get pipe to pipe as easily with
Right.
just one basic lateral step. And so I at least try and show those goalies visually what it looks like when you take one lateral step versus if you step out aggressively with both feet at a 45-degree angle. And during a first lesson, I like to play around with that for like 10 or 15 minutes, try it one way, then switch it up, try it the other, and then say to them, what felt more natural to you?
Yeah.
But I had a lesson this past week where I was meeting with a very talented 8th grade goalie for the second time. And I noticed during our first session, he really loves taking lateral steps.
Mm.
And I told him, I go, I don't love it, but I'll let you keep it. That's your playing style. And then by halfway through our second lesson, I had to pause and say, hey, man, you have proven me completely wrong. You are very much athletic enough and tall enough to be doing a lateral step at your age. You
Yeah.
are teaching me that it can work.
Yeah. Yeah. I Coach Jack Runkle said something in a presentation that he was doing on goalies one time that really stuck with me. And it's like you gotta. I'm the same as you in that, like, I'm not going to completely change like a step of the kid. If it's working, great. But if it's not working, like, try something new, and especially in the off season, like in a pickup league, in a summer game, right? And in a game that doesn't have much stakes, like try something new. And then if it works, like if it works better, if you feel better, then guess what? Like you're now a better goalie. And if it doesn't work, great. Like go back to how you're playing before, but with the confidence of knowing that, like, all right, lateral steps are for me, right? Like that's how I play the best. I can be more confident knowing that I'm playing 100% what's right for me, and that stuck with me quite a bit. It's like, yeah, try it, and if it works, you're going to be better. If it doesn't work, you're going to be better, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, love that. What about, when kids hit a slump for one reason or another, right? They had it. They're not playing at the level that they're accustomed to. How do you help them as a coach get out of that?
I like to look at what are they doing pre-game, mostly mentally, physically. What kind of physical warm-up are they doing? Are they doing enough stretching? Are they doing a good enough dynamic warm-up? Are they properly eating and hydrating before the game? And then also, I'm a big believer in things like meditation and visualization. Starting my freshman year of high school, now my teammates thought I was nuts for this. I would go up to the empty gym during the spring and I would sit by myself, close my eyes, and I would visualize myself going through my actual warm up
Yeah.
shot by shot. I would visualize myself seeing the shot released from my coach's stick, stepping, punching my top hand across, clearing the ball back to him. And I would do that for a full 10 to 15 minutes just to get my mind and my body into kind of that setting of, okay, I'm going to be making saves. This is what it's going to look like. Then I step out in the field and then I do it. And so if a goalie is in a slump, I try and get them to really over focus on their pre-game mental preparation and try and get them to try what may sound weird, like meditating or doing yoga or just doing some really basic breathing exercises. So I think things like that for such a mentally stressful position especially at a young age, it's very hard to be a goalie. I think can have incredible benefits.
100% agree. Yeah, 100% agree. I remember when I played in college, like the night before a game, I would just be in my room, like just visualizing all the different types of saves that I was going to make the next day. I love that. I love that. And just excruciating detail, right? Like, guys driving down the right alley, like, see the stands, like the sun, how's it feel on your back? And like really just living all of these sensations. And I mean, they've done studies. Those are like as good as real reps.
Oh, absolutely.
The visualization. So yeah, that's huge. And that's a great tip for the goalies who are like nervous going into a big tryout or a big game as well. Not just a slump, like it can help you, right, get focused for that big tryout or that big game. Awesome. When you talk about the mental game of being a great lacrosse goalie, what are some of the lessons that you teach the kids?
Well, number one, every coach will tell you this: you have to have a short memory. You need to let go of the shot that went by you the second it goes by you. You flush it down the drain, it's gone. It might as well have not even happened. And I'm a big believer in telling all my goalies it's always about the next shot. It's never about the last shot. So there's kind of having that mentality of always looking forward, always being cognizant of what's in front of you, not what's behind you. And then also, you need to be a little bit full of yourself, I think, to excel at this position. The best goalies in the world, they're confident in their abilities. And so I try and tell my goalies, even if you're not the most confident person, I know I wasn't in middle school and high school. I had to become sort of a different persona when I would play. I'd have to say, you know what, this is what I excel at. Here I know what I'm doing. I feel great about what I'm going to do. And that would sort of give me the confidence to go out and perform. So even if you don't feel confident, for example, speaking in class in front of your classmates when the teacher calls on you, you need to somehow summon that confidence to be a vocal leader on your defense.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of step outside yourself and sort of become a different version of yourself to really be that leader on the field. And that's
Yeah.
incredibly difficult. That takes years of practice. That's not something that happens overnight.
Right. Yeah, that's the challenge of lacrosse goalie, right? Is like you got to have this totally unearned sense of confidence.
You're
You're like, get
saving
out.
half of every shot that goes in. You need to keep telling yourself,
I'm
I'm
the
the man.
greatest. I'm the
I'm the best
greatest.
on this field. Like
Yeah,
everyone's lucky to be shooting on me.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Um, Speaking of that topic though, I've had several conversations on that topic. And one, I don't know if you've ever read the book, The Alter Ego.
I
Or the,
haven't heard of it
the
though.
alter ego effect. It's essentially the idea is exactly what you're talking about, but he goes a step further and says like you can actually create this character, right? So like this is going to be my alter ego. You know, Crazy D. You give him a name. You give him a song. You give him actually even he even recommends like something physical, like a necklace or something. Like when I put that on, like I'm that character, right? And that character embodies all of these things that maybe Damon doesn't, right? So maybe Damon's a shy, reserved dude, but like now when I step into this alter ego, like I'm confident, I'm loud, I'm a leader, and it works. It works, and you can do it in all sorts of different like arenas, he calls them, right? Like in work, with being a husband, being a brother, being a sister, like all these different things. So it's a pretty cool idea, and it like is exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah,
think it's essential.
yeah. Well, Coach, this was amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Yeah. You feel like we covered it all? Anything else you wanna chat about?
I feel like we covered it. Thank you so much for having me on. Been a big fan of the podcast for a while. Love what you do for the position and for the sport. I think you have a phenomenal resources for all goalies of all skill levels. And please just keep doing what you've been doing. It's great for the game.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Comments like that keep me going for sure. Yeah, I started doing Lax Goalie Rat full time a couple years ago, and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that I can wake up each day and get to work and watch lacrosse and think about how to help lacrosse goalies. It's awesome. But thanks to coaches like you who come onto the show and are so generous with their knowledge, for the next generation of goalies. So There we go. If you had to leave the goalies out there with one final piece of advice, what would that be?
Like I said just a few minutes ago, it's about the next shot. It's not about the last shot. Always be looking forward. Always stay positive.
Awesome. Coach Pat Wallace, thank you so much.
Thank you.